China, alliances across Europe, Russia, and the position of America as its global leader. These are all the issues that this president, President Joe Biden, must face as he looks at his foreign policy to establish the United States as the continued leader of democracy across the world. What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the missteps? And what are some of the crises that are on the horizon? This is E.W. Claville, and you're listening to this segment of the Claville Report Synopsis as we explore President Joe Biden's foreign policy. President Joe Biden's foreign policy is an issue of both alliances, opportunities, and crises. Every president has to deal with issues across the world, with the United States being the global leader of not only the world and democracy, but also the economy, and also the perpetuator of peace across nations that are experiencing uprisings, civil wars, and all-out wars against neighbors and individuals or others across the world. It's very important for a president's foreign policy to be in tune with where the world is, but more importantly, where the world is going. This is no different from President Joe Biden and his current foreign policy. According to the Brookings Institute, Washington Post, Reuters, and Associated Press, the foreign policy of Joe Biden administration emphasizes repairing the U.S.'s alliances, which Biden says have been damaged under Trump's administration, and also returning the U.S. to a position of trusted leadership among world democracies to counter challenges from Russia and also China. Moreover, it says that as president, Biden has sought to strengthen a transatlantic alliance between the U.S. and Europe. He recommitted the U.S. to NATO alliance and collective security. According to Wikipedia, it says that Biden returned the U.S. to the Paris Climate Agreement. It also took steps to combat climate change. In addition, it says that his administration emphasizes international cooperation to combat COVID-19, which he just declared as being ended, and as well as the U.S. defenses against foreign-sponsored cyber attacks and cyber espionage. It's been 2 years since those statements were made. It's been 2 years since that agenda has been laid out for the American people. So where is the report card? Where is the grading? According to foreignpolicy.com, Biden's midterm report card, they asked 20 experts to grade the administration's foreign policy after these 2 years in office. Now, they touted the successes of his administration, which led a massive effort to push back against Russia, in which President Putin, unleashed a horrific and violent aggression in Europe, not seen since 1945. It also said that his team, Biden's foreign policy team, helped to bring a renewed seriousness of U.S. foreign policy, making that stand in sharp contrast with the chaos of the Trump era. But all was not a success. As a matter of fact, we ended the longest war in U.S. history in Afghanistan. And when it ended, let's just say the pullout wasn't as successful or as coordinated as it could have been. Also, the president and his administration, according to these experts, negotiated some geopolitical and human rights policies and realities, forced some uncomfortable compromises. So in other words, there have been a lot of highs and there have been some lows, like every administration. But let's take a look at what this particular person, these various experts, note as it relates to the president's foreign policy agenda. Very quickly, your fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations, Leanna Fix, gives him an A-. It says that President Biden wanted some stability and guardrails with the United States in its relationship with Russia. He's achieved that, I see. He's achieved a lot of that. However, now is really time to see where the president stands as it relates to the issues in Russia. Also, Bunny Glasser, the Asia Program Director at the German Marshall Fund of the United States, gives him a B as it relates to China and Indo-Pacific sustained focus despite the war. It says that Biden administration deserves high marks for sustained focus on China and the Indo-Pacific despite Russia's war in Ukraine. It's begun to deliver on what it calls invest, align, and compete strategy toward China, including channeling billions of dollars into the U.S. semiconductor manufacturing, science, research, and retaining most of what former President Donald Trump issued restrictions against China itself. We all know that when we look at foreign policy and we look at the world and the global setting of the world now, we understand that China is the encroaching upon the U.S. superpower status. China has the second largest economy in the world. China is now positioning themselves across the world to be partners with other countries. What is this and how does it affect the United States? Now, anytime other countries try to dethrone those countries that are the leaders of the world or the number one country in the world, it doesn't come without conflict. We know that China is encroaching upon U.S. interests in the Asia-Pacific region. We know that China has caused some uneasiness in the Pentagon and at the Pentagon as it relates to cyber attacks. And not just that, but also military buildups across the Asia-Pacific region. Whether it be this year, whether it be 2024, 2025, we all know that there is going to be a time where the United States and China will have to come to a face-off along these areas of crises, these areas of conflict, in order to find an opportunity. Will there be an all-out war? Will there be hard negotiations at the table? Will there be concessions made on each side? We don't know. But stay tuned and we'll see what happens and transpires. However, before we get there, the United States is also dealing with Russia. We know that President Putin himself has unleashed a horrific and unnecessary and unjustified war against the people of Ukraine. We know that the world is grappling now with how to deal with President Putin, how to deal with Russia, and how to deal with this crisis as thousands and thousands and thousands of Ukrainians are killed and even more become displaced every single day. This is this president's major foreign policy issue as it relates to Europe and averting a world crisis and possibly a world war. But domestically, the issues become, how do we deal with our immigration policies? Because of climate change, climate crises, and what I call climate refugees, who are leaving their countries out of desperation because of the impending issues due to climate change and coming to the U.S. and other Western nations. Now we're looking at many individuals that are coming to the country undocumented, many individuals who are coming to the country seeking opportunity, but not going through the proper channels, all because of desperation. How does President Biden deal with this? How does his administration both respect the people that are coming here out of desperation, but also hold them accountable to respect the laws of this land and respect the citizens of this country? That is the juggling act. That's the balancing act that this administration and every administration will have to deal with. But right now, domestically, I believe that that's the most important and most impending issue that this president has to deal with: the immigration crisis at our borders. And finally, when we talk about foreign policy, we talk about the U.S. We know the U.S. defending its borders and also defending its interests across the world. But it's no more just defending our interests across the world on our borders with physical ships, guns, and ports and bases, military bases. But it's defending our interests across the world in the cybersecurity, in the cyber world. How do we now deal with cybersecurity threats to our nation's infrastructure? How do we deal with the cybersecurity threats to our nation's economic system? Right now, we know that if you're investing on the stock market, most investment is done by computers. You have people there helping to facilitate. You have people on the floor trading, but a lot of it is done by computers. Our lives are operated by our handheld computers. Our defense systems are online with computers. Our water, our electrical grid, many of our resources for food are online with computers. Because we transact most of our lives through technology, the threats to our existence reside solely in the cyber world. How do we now thwart it? Now our defenses and our agencies are phenomenal in keeping hundreds, if not thousands, of threats on a daily basis at bay. However, we do see over and over again a few here and there, a few threats, a few hacks, a few data breaches affecting us. One day, and let's hopefully is not soon, we may have to deal with a major crisis. Let's just hope and continue to work ask our agencies to work to help to thwart that. But that is an issue, a policy. And that I believe is one of the greatest issues that this president will have to deal with, and every president thereafter. The economy, China, Russia, immigration policy, and cybersecurity. I believe these are the 5 issues that our president's foreign policy must address, must ensure that those policies are effective, not just for now, but also in the future, to ensure our protection here within our borders and across the world. That's been 2 years. We'll see what the next 2 years hold. This has been E.W. Claville, and you've been listening to this segment of the Claville Report Synopsis, President Biden's foreign policy, the first 2 years. We'll see you next time.